Welcome into the Inside Bassmaster Podcast. I'm your host, Ronnie Moore. My co-host, as always, Kyle Jessie. And we're getting to the point in the season. We're just a week or two. You know, it's one of those things where we have the 100 days till the season starts countdown. We've got the 2 months till the season count. We've got less than a week or so until the season starts, or at least till practice starts for the first event, which means we better get kind of a prediction show out of the way. Some of the big awards for the year and some of those things that we like to have some conjecture about early in the year, and we forget what we pick at the end, and we're like, I think I said this. This is where we get to mark it down, and people can go back and judge us later for what we got right or what we got wrong in this episode.
Yeah, and this is a good way, there's always been some speculation there at the JM studio that Ronnie changes his picks at the end of the year. So now there's no turning back. We've got video, concrete proof evidence of what we're picking here. I'm guessing we might hit on some, and I'm guessing we'll probably miss on some as well, and that's just going to be part of it. But no, like you mentioned, you keep thinking all throughout the off season, oh, we've got time. Like, there's still time. There's still time until you get to about right now, and you come to the realization that everything's happening really quickly. And especially from like the standpoint of like fantasy fishing and things like that, I'm starting to get stories in, pundit picks, things like that. And I'm just like, man, it's here. Like we're back doing it.
Yeah, and it's even a rush for anglers. Like I said this, if we have a 1 month off season, if we end in December and we start in February, they got 1 full month to get it done. They're going to be more prepared and more equipped with stuff going on than if we have a 6 month off season, because it seems like there's still anglers at the last second rushing to get stuff done before the season starts. So who knows how it would be if we gave them less time or if we gave them more time. But I know that everyone's ramped up, ready to go, and people are already in the tournament fishing mode, whether they have their jersey finalized or not. They're just waiting for it to get mailed to them, and they're already in the tournament season. But with that being said, we're going to have a couple people on in this episode from different backgrounds. We're going to have some fishermen, some talking heads from various outlets, whether it's Bassmaster Radio and Thom Abraham, or it's somebody from Bassmaster Live other than me, maybe some Bassmaster.com representation, and maybe people who actually make their living with a rod and reel give some pundit picks, so to say, on maybe who they think will do well this season besides themselves. I'd love to hear them pick themselves too, but I want them to go outside the box as well if they're an angler. And so we're going to go over a couple categories here. I'm going to list them out. Who we think our 2023 Angler of the Year is, who the 2023 Rookie of the Year will be, 2023 Classic Champ, what we would consider the most improved or the breakout angler for 2023. We saw Kenta Kimura in 2022. He went from 69th or so in points in 2021 up to the top 20 in points. So he made over a 50-point move in Angler of the Year from 1 year to the next. So who will make that move? And we kind of handicapped it, the bottom 20 or so in points. Which one of those 20 will make the jump up? Because we did add more anglers to the field. We'll have 104. And so I didn't want to go up to top 60, because then that's going to be like a 30-person swing, and all they have to do is move up 20 spots to be considered a breakout and make the classic. So 70th and below, who's going to make a breakout there? And then the last two is, will a lake break 100 pounds this year? We had 3 different times last year. We broke 108 different anglers got it done. Will we break the century mark? At what lake? And maybe how many lakes can do that? And then the last one will be, name an angler specifically who will get a win in 2023 and where he could possibly do it. So 6 different ones: AOY, ROY, Classic, Most Improved / Breakout Angler, Century Club possibilities, and specifically picking an angler to get a win, and where he's going to get it done. So Kyle, when we think about it, though, overall, did you have any kind of thought process picking these? Did you try to go safe? Did you try to go bold? Did you try to go with the numbers and see who's been close in a couple different, lakes that we're fishing, and maybe they can break through for a win? Maybe guys who've been in the top 10 in points a few years. How did you kind of go about handicapping some of these so that you can be close, but you don't pick too much chalk where it's like, oh, thanks for playing, you just pick the low-hanging fruit, Brandon Palaniuk again or something?
I'd say I understand what you're saying 100%. And I'd say of all the categories, I went a little kind of similar to how you and I both pick our fantasy fishing teams, a little bit of chalk and a little bit of I guess dark horse, if you want to say it that way. So I mean, it's a good mixture. I think a couple of the answers, 2 or 3 of the answers will be maybe a little surprising, and then 2 or 3 of them, or might be a little chalk. But like you said, when it comes to guys winning or guys winning AOY, I mean, it's hard to look away from the guys that have been close. Have been
For
right
sure,
there
for
and
sure.
had a good chance. So they might not be as from back in the pack dark horse as some of the other picks, but yeah, no, they're it's a mixture of both.
Well, I'll say this: our first two awards that we're going to try to predict and talk about, Angler of the Year and Rookie of the Year, I'd say almost the field size for Rookie of the Year and Angler of the Year are the same. And now hang with me on this. We got about 14 to 15 new anglers joining the league this year, but 3 of them can't be Rookie of the Year. Poche, Hallman, and Nixon can't be Rookie of the Year. So we got about 12 to 13 who could be Rookie of the Year. I'd say there are about 12 to 15 who could be Angler of the Year. And that's no disrespect to anybody. To be Angler of the Year, you have to have an incredible amount of consistency, or you have to have the ability to win and get multiple wins in a year to make up for where you slip and fall. So that kind of narrows the field. I mean, I always like to say everyone in the field has a chance to get a top 10 on a regular Elite Series event. Everyone has the ability to go make a final day cut if they get hot, if they find the right pattern, maximize a fish, whatever. Everyone has the skills to do that. I'd say it's a exclusive club for those who have the ability preseason to go out and win Angler of the Year. And so that's not being rude or anything to anybody. It's just when you kind of handicap it, there are 32 teams in the NFL, I think, 32 teams in the NFL. There are about 6 or 7 that could win the Super Bowl tops when we start the season. Then when you get to the playoffs, 2 or 3 of those didn't even make the playoffs, and it's an even smaller percentage. It's 4 have a chance to do it out of 32, which is 1/8, which is 12%, which I'd say 10 out of 100 is about 10 to 12%. So I'd say that's a decent way to look at it. But with that being said, why don't you go, and we haven't talked about our picks with each other yet, so give me your 2023 Angler of the Year pick, and we'll just kind of go back and forth on each award real quick.
Angler of the Year. It's tricky because it's 2 guys from the same bloodline, I think, have a good chance of winning. Chris or Corey Johnston. I'm not sure which one it's going to be. I mean, history would tell me that Chris would probably, be more apt to be a little more consistent. However, I could see either of them doing well. So I'm going to say Chris Johnston. It's a mixture of 2 things for me. So obviously the back half of the season, you're talking about 3 smallmouth events back to back to back. And then, talking about fishing in Florida, those 2 fish really well in Florida. They both have a good track record. Fishing FLW Tour, getting a hot start down there at Okeechobee. I'm not sure either of them have a ton of experience on some of the fisheries there in the middle, but I like their chances just to stay consistent enough, just like they've done every year and been, somewhere around there in the top 10, seemingly, it seems like every year since I've joined the Elite Series. But I would say this year is going to be the one. I think they'll have a hot enough start, bridge the gap there in the middle, and it's hard to root against either of those 2, down the stretch. So I would say Chris Johnston, but like I said, if it's Corey, I'm going to take credit for it too.
I like those picks for the fact of when you do think about the middle of the season, you think about the grinders, the tough ones that could be where they slip up. Chris Johnston, the last time we were at the Sabine, got a top 10. I think he got 5th place. So Johnston has done, Chris specifically has done well at the Sabine. And so I like that pick. It's a very smart pick. And yeah, something always seems to get him. But Kyle, I'd really like to see if Chris can keep his top 20 streak going. I think he ended the year with 6 straight top 20s. And let's just say he starts off with top 20s at Okeechobee and Seminole. He could have 8 straight top 20s or something like that from one season to another. So we'll see about that. My pick for Angler of the Year for 2023, I'm going to go with Patrick Walters. Okay. Walters, I believe, has been in the top 5 in points the last 3 seasons. Prior to that, I don't think he's been worse than 20th. I believe. I think I wrote all this down on a piece of paper that I cannot find right now. But yeah, top 5 the last 3 years. And it's really been, I think, one year, the 2020 year, he was within like 11 points of winning the title. Like the whole top 5 was within 11 or 15 points of winning the AOY. Then the next year he goes and gets the same point total, but fighter season was so great. It was like he was 100 points behind. And then this year right there as well in the top 5, behind the likes of Palaniuk, Lester, and Chris Johnston and those guys. And so I think Walters, especially with Murray, a place that he lived near for college and fished and won a national championship on, Santee, a place that he lives, grown up, and knows very, very well. He always does well in Florida, whether that's going to be at Seminole or Okeechobee. Okeechobee is just a different monster because of how much it changes, so you just never know year to year. I don't even know how the Floridian locals will do in Okeechobee, but it'll be one of those things that if it is tough, like the middle of our season, Lay Lake and Sabine, man, I like the grinder, and I think Walters can go get 100 pounds in a tournament and go get 60 pounds in a tournament in the same season and compete. And then I think the biggest X factor for him winning Angler of the Year is the end of the schedule. Seemingly the first few years of his career, he struggled with smallmouth, struggled to figure that out consistently. It would be like 10 pounds. And then you have 24 pounds and then you have 18 pounds and you're like, just don't have the terrible day. You can't have a fall off the mountain day on smallmouth. So I think Walters has got that figured out the last year or so, fishing multiple tours up north, getting experience, trying things and experimenting. I think that Walters is prepared to make St. Clair, Champlain, and St. Lawrence his best 3 trio he could possibly ask for to win Angler of the Year this year. Let's go to Rookie of the Year. Unless you have anything to say about that Walters pick, negative or positive, but yeah.
The only thing I was going to say is that was actually my first thought too, was picking Walters, and a huge reason was for the South Carolina swing right there in the middle of the season. You're talking about, like you said, as long as you get off to a hot start, the odds of him, notching a back-to-back, top 10 performance there is not unlikely. You can never really say it's unlikely because that's such a hard thing to do, but for somebody like Walters, that'd be like, it sets up on paper really well. No, moving along to Rookie of the Year. You want me to go first? You want to go first?
No, I'll go first. I'll give you the you go, I go, and then I'll go, you go kind of thing. So for Rookie of the Year, man, it's like I'm like, oh yeah, this dude, Rookie of the Year. And then I look down and I'm like, well, it could be that guy. It could be that guy. There's kind of 3 or 4 that I think about, and I don't want to list them all, but there's moments where I think that Bryant Smith could do it. There's moments where I think John Suckup could do it. There's moments that I think Cole Sands could do it. But also Joey Cifuentes, who has been a touring pro. There's so many reasons for so many guys, but out of all of it, I went with Cole Sands. He's a rookie from the college series. I didn't pick him because he is a college angler, but he is on the water more than most anybody in the field, living on Chickamauga, guiding, fishing around there, the Tennessee River. The dude's a fisherman. He just puts in the work and fishes and gives the effort. So I think that we could really we'll see some bumps in the road for him for sure, but I really expect Cole Sands to show out this year. And boy, if he doesn't win Rookie of the Year, I bet it's because the guy who does is in the top 6 or 7 in AOY, and he's going to be terrible down in 16th or something. And, is going to have one of those Drew Cook years where Rookie of the Year's fighting for Angler of the Year, or a Austin Felix year, the next season, stuff like that. So Cole Sands is my pick. I don't know who you chose, but I'm sticking with the former college angler from Bryan College.
Yeah, I'm going with David Gaston.
Nice.
And the reason I say that, it's not just because I went and shot some content with him. I mean, that's like, I got to kind of get a better picture of who David Gaston is. And, I think that he's got that factor to him where it seems like nothing really rattles him. And I could be completely wrong. We could look back and be like, maybe that wasn't true. But like, just talking to him, it's very evident. Like, I don't think anything rattles him. I think he's it's easy for him to stay, even keel, so to speak. And then last year, what he did in the Open, the amount of top 10s he had there towards the end of the season, I think his, potential to have some really big events, top 10s are really, really high. However, the one worry I would have is lack of experience up north, being, a 3 tournament swing there. I think he's going to have a really good chance once we head up there. What happens when we get there is to be determined. You can almost not really just assume somebody's not going to fish well for smallmouth because they've never done it before, because we've seen examples where that's not the case.
Yeah.
Guys that don't have nearly the experience and somehow just click with them. It seems like almost, it kind of seems like that really for a lot of guys. You either just vibe with smallmouth or you don't. So that part will, is to be determined. But I went a little dark horse there with the rookie of the year. Like you said, I could see any of those guys doing well, but for some reason, I got David Gaston doing well.
I like that. He's very streaky. I mean, he had 4 top 10s out of 9 opens last season, and he did them, in multiple divisions with, Red River, Ross Barnett in the Centrals, and then he did Hartwell in the Southerns, and he did Upper Chesapeake in the Northerns. I like that Gaston pick. He's very young too. He's been fishing for a while now, and I've known his name, and I've covered him in the opens before. But he's been fishing in a white T-shirt, for quite a few years now, and so I always admire him. We saw somebody like Wes Logan get his start, repping something like that, and it's always refreshing to see that. We will see the lights get bigger and the pressure gets more on a 4-day elite derb. I talked to David the other day, and he was like, "Yeah, so if I do this, I have time to make it home in between Okeechobee and Seminole if I wanted to, right?" And I was like, "Yeah, but aren't you going to be fishing like Saturday and Sunday of the Okeechobee event?" And he was like, "Oh yeah. I'm gonna try to make day 3 and day 4, but like just if I didn't, I don't have to go straight to Seminole." It's like, no, you don't have to, because you're only a few hours from there in Alabama. And so I had to remind him that it is a 4-day derb, and he needs to fish all 4 if he can. Don't let up just to go home for no reason. That's a good pick. I like that refreshing pick. It's fun that we just kind of listed off 6 rookies out of 12 or 13, and we could make other reasons. There's guys that we know a lot less about that could show out big time. So give me your classic champ. This is a hard one. I feel like this is just like the angler of the year. There's 55 guys in it. Opens, Anglers, College, Nation, no offense, we hadn't seen you win one. It's so we're not saying you can't do it, but it's very difficult to go win the classic, being an auxiliary tournament coming into the elite field, merging in the classic. So it kind of cuts the field down there. And then you have first-time classic qualifiers. Very rarely does that happen. You cut the field down there. It's a 10 or 15 person thing, even more so, especially with the pressure. So who's your 2023 classic pick out of Knoxville and the Tennessee River?
I've got Stetson Blaylock. I think he's been so close so many times here of late. And I think that time of the year fits him so well. I think I don't even necessarily think it's a history thing with the Tennessee River or anything like that. I just think that time of the year, last year we talked to him about it after the classic on Hartwell, like having the ability to have multiple patterns and be able to run all those things. I think, bearing the weather, not being crazy, I think that at the Tennessee River, there'll be some of that. I mean, I think there'll be different patterns to catch fish, different ways. And at this point, I mean, like Stetson Blaylock in the spring and, that time of year pre-spawn has proved to be a force really wherever it's at. So obviously having several really close calls too, between, the 2020 Classic and then last year at Hartwell. Definitely makes me think that he's got as good of a chance. But also, I will say this, and I'll let you make your pick, is for some reason, I feel like that's the hardest thing to predict in a lot of classics. Because you just really never know. I mean, you have no idea. I mean, you can look back at like the Ott Defoe Classic on the Tennessee River. That was, to me, more one of the easier ones to pick because it seemed a little just kind of obvious. But
yeah,
I mean, like most years, the more I like think about it, like the guy that wins is almost never the guy you think's going to win. I mean, it never. I mean, who had Hank Cherry going back to back? I mean,
sure.
It's a hard thing to predict. So if Stetson Blaylock finishes, 50th, I'm not going to be like shocked, but just everything combined with this tournament makes me think that, Stetson Blaylock has as good of a chance as anybody in the field.
Yeah, it's like you never think about someone going back to back in the classic until they win one. And now, like, I'm like, could Jason Christie go back to back? Like, I think this sets up well for him. And you start making those arguments in your mind. He made a top 10 the last time we were here when Gustafson won, and so things like that. But for I like the Blaylock pick. 2 third places out of the last 3 events in the spring. Actually, 2 third places out of the last 2 classics in the spring because Ray Roberts was in the summer. That's a crazy, no bearing on any other classic, throw that out the window type of thing. Not throw it out the window, no disrespect to the people who do well in those, but like it was just
different.
There's no correlation no correlation. I liked Stetson's pick, especially with how much he likes to crank. This is like a fan pick for so many people. When's it going to happen? Is he going to do it? Blah, blah, blah. Late March on a possible dirty river fishery that's connected to the Tennessee River. I don't see how Gerald Swindle doesn't have 8 rods on deck and catch one on every rod. I don't see how he doesn't catch them cranking on a chatterbait, on a spinnerbait, probably throwing a jerk bait, flipping a jig. With it being a little closer to April and a little warmer, man, I just don't see how Swindle doesn't win. And if Puxatawny Phil wants to say 6 more weeks of winter from the 1st of December, that means winter's ending right before the Classic. We're going to be in spring. It's going to be no more cold. And so I just don't see how Swindle doesn't put it together more. Hartwell's not really a strength with clear water like that. He had good history there, but not tremendously in his wheelhouse. I feel like this is much more in his wheelhouse, covering water, finding a pattern, finding a region of the lake, running new water, just whatever. I feel like this could really flow with Swindle.
I like that.
Also another one, just a hometown flair. I don't know how Brandon Card's going to do this season with his Bell's palsy and his recovery from being sick the last few months. We pray for him that he starts the season strong and safely as well. But he was really one that I was eyeing for this Classic. If he could, he's the truest local we have, even though he lives in North Carolina. There, he grew up, he lived on a house on the banks of it. So he's fished this part of the Tennessee River more than anyone else in the field. And I felt like he had a good shot to use that local knowledge that time of the year until he got sick. And I hope that he's fully recovered by then. But yeah, let's do this real quick before we have our first guest on. Breakout most improved angler, that was 70th or lower in points. There's a couple anglers that you could pick that are hot button names, but I'm going to go with Justin Hamner. I think that I was really kind of shocked with his setback in 2022. Such a great 2021, rooming with Patrick Walters. Not rooming, they both camp, but just being really close friends with him. That same game plan, that just shows you can go chase forward facing sonar fish and not just land on them every time. Because that's his wheelhouse. He did it at the Classic, didn't do it the rest of the season. Welcher did it in the Classic, didn't do it the rest of the season. So it's some of those things where you can just get out of a sink for the regular season. So I'd like to see Hamner show some consistency this year, maybe get back to his roots, catch some fish early in the year without it, and then lean on it, maybe event 3, 5, 7, something like that before we get to the smallmouth. But I like to see Justin Hamner make a comeback. I think his season in 2022, he finished in 80th place in points out of 94. We had 90 or so at the end of the year. 80th place, way below what we thought he should do. I expect an uptick from Justin Hamner, a little bit of a dark horse guy out of the 5 or 10 you could pick from below 70th.
You like the Last Coat Bros in this season. I dig it. And that's not a dig at either of those. They're just 2 of the absolute best at doing that. I like that pick a lot, and I hope you're exactly right. So for me, I've got right under the 70th place in AOY last year. I got Alex Redwine, and I think a lot of people would that pick would come out of left field. However, hit a lot of momentum going into the last few events. I think he cashed a check. I want to say the last 3 events of the elite season last year. Started out about how a lot of rookies you would expect him to start out. He and Jay Shakurat are best buddies, and they travel, and they're, I think both of those guys are getting their feet underneath them. I think you look at the schedule this year, 3 tournaments at the back half of the year. I'd be willing to bet money that he would, cash the check in all 3 of those events, and knock on wood, I hope I don't jinx him. But, if he has a solid start, I think he's, starting to get his feet underneath him. And I could see him having a breakout season. You want me to right in?
Well, this next one, Kyle, we talked about it. The Century Club, it's a big deal. It doesn't happen every year, but now when it happens one year, we just think it's going to happen again. We got a great list of lakes on the schedule this year. Possibilities are just off the charts. Will we break 100 pounds this year? And if so, which event or what events?
I'll make this really easy. No, it's not happening.
I don't think so either, man. I don't think so either.
I think there's plenty of there's plenty of lakes on the schedule that have the potential to do it.
For sure.
I just think the time of the year based on each event is just going to be a little off. Like Okeechobee, even like, we know of all the things that are going on there with the low water, the high water, grass, no grass. I mean, it just seems like it's all over the place. I don't see it happening again at Santee. Do I think there'll be plenty of heavyweight tournaments?
I think
sure.
there'll be a bunch of good bags at Santee. I think they'll probably have, 5 or 6 guys in the 90 range fighting for the win, but to break 100, yeah, they needed perfect sight fishing for a couple days, and they did. I don't think we'll do it the Thousand Islands, St. Lawrence. That was a perfect storm. Granted, we'll be there a month later, and those fish get bigger, but the weather gets scarier. So it's a little difficult there. They do group up pretty good, though. St. Clair, I think, is actually our best opportunity to do it, in my opinion. I think St. Clair is going to be St. Clair, I'll say this, will be the highest weight event where brown fish get weighed in. Champlain, St. Lawrence, St. Clair, I think that St. Clair is going to be the highest weight event we have. Yeah, and like you said, Santee and Seminole. I think Seminole is going to be great. I think it's going to be fabulous, but I think it's going to be one of those things. Somebody's in maybe low 90s and seconds in mid 80s. I think somebody can run away with it a little bit. We had that in 2014 with B Height beating Faircloth by like 10 plus pounds on that final day. So that's something to look at. We both said no, very shocking, but I just felt that. Last one, name an angler that will get a win in 2023. I didn't preface that they had to be a first-time winner, but just an angler to get a win in 2023 and where they'll do it. I picked Matt Herron, and it's one of those two in the middle. He's going to win at Lay, or he's going to win at the Sabine. One of those two. Matt Herron, I don't know which one. If I had to pick one, I'm going to say Sabine. But Matt Herron at the Sabine or Lay Lake is my pick in the middle of the season.
I like that a lot. I could see that happening, and would be a huge fan of that happening. I went more chalk here. And the only reason I did this, one, it's not just because he's a hammer and like he's one of the best we have, but Greg Hackney, if you look at this schedule, you could pick you could pick half of them at least and have a good chance of winning the tournament. Hackney would win that tournament. I think right off the jump, he's got a really good chance, 2 in a row. Easily could see him doing it at Santee, at Lay. He's won at Sabine. One thing I do want to mention,
Murray turns into a sight fishing deal. Like, just never know there too.
For sure. The one thing I will say is like the Lay tournament. I really like. You feel like, oh, it's got to be a local. It's going to win that tournament because we've got 97 locals in that tournament. But I think that's going to. We'll talk about it once we get closer. I know we're trying to get to our first guest, but the closer we get to that, I think there's too many guys that know too much, and it's going to be somebody that knows way less is going to win that tournament. I'm almost certain of it. And I could be wrong, and I'm not, I'll be the idiot that said that, but I mean, I really think that's going to happen.
I picked Patrick Walters because I think he takes charge of AOI at the Lay event because it's going to be topsy-turvy. I love it, Kyle. Let's get our first guest in here and see their thoughts on the prediction as we bring in Thom Abraham of Bassmaster Radio. Thom, he's a bona fide talker just like ourselves. He's the man with his own radio show. You know that you've reached the pinnacle of talking if you have your own TV or you have your own radio show. So Thom Abraham, Bassmaster Radio, welcome into the Inside Bassmaster Podcast. We're glad to have you here. And sorry if we've kind of encroached on your territory. We took a year before we invited you on because we didn't know if you were for us or against us. But no, Thom, you've always been cordial to us, especially having us on your show.
Are you kidding me? I use you guys for show prep. You guys are great. I watch your podcast, and then I know what I'm going to do in my next radio show.
Well, Thom, 2023 season's about to kick off. We got about a week or so until, from when this podcast airs, from when the season starts. Anglers are already in Florida trying to get their sun on and get out of this terrible winter that we call everywhere else in the country. We got some questions for you. We may have sent these to you ahead of time, so you're a little prepped, but we just disclosed our picks. And so what we're going to do is we're going to ask you each category to give us your pick and a little bit of reason why. And then we will follow it up with who we did. And if it's a surprising, we can fill you in on why we chose it. But we just outlined it for the folks at the beginning of the show, who we did. So we don't have to necessarily go into detail as much as we did at the beginning. So off the top, no pressure. Who's your 2023 Bassmaster Progressive Angler of the Year winner, in your opinion?
Well, I'm going to mention a couple of guys that I think are contenders, and then give you the guy that's I think is going to win it. I think Patrick Walters is getting really close. He was top 5 last year, and I'm, with 2 events in South Carolina. He's strong wherever he goes. I really like Patrick Walters. I also think that there's a possibility we'll see a big bounce back from Seth Feider, who fell to 22 the year after winning the Angler of the Year in that stunning fashion the year before. But when those 3 ponds up north, when they go up there, he is going to be really tough at the St. Lawrence, and of course at St. Clair, and at Champlain. He's outstanding. So if he's anywhere near the top 10 and when they go up north, I think he could be a problem. I like Drew Benton as well, and he'll have one that's near his home pond. He doesn't really call it that anymore at Seminole, but he knows it really, really well. He'll do well, I think, at Okeechobee in the opener. He was close last year at 4. But I'm going with Brandon Lester. I think that my boy Brandon Lester, kind of my neighbor, lives about 30 miles from me, and I just think he's ready to close the deal now. Those wins last year meant so much to him. I got Brandon Lester as my AOY.
I like that because I still couldn't find the evidence. I don't know if I just didn't watch long enough in our episode, Kyle, but I swear I remember saying on the podcast, Brandon Lester last year, and he almost came through, in the final few days of the season for me to be Angler of the Year. You mentioned, you didn't pick him, but you mentioned one of my picks, Thom, and my pick for Angler of the Year was Patrick Walters. 3 years in a row in the top 5. Like you said, a couple South Carolina events. I think he's righted his wrongs up north. I think he's figured out how to fish smallmouth. So he was my pick.
Yeah, and Thom, for the same reason that you mentioned Seth Feider, that was actually the reason I went with Corey or Chris Johnson. I think either of those two. I said Chris, but if I told Ronnie if Corey wins it, I'll take credit for that as well. But I think those last 3 tournaments up north, as long as they have a good start in Florida, which they tend to do normally, I think that they'll bridge the gap in the middle of the season and could take it up there.
Yeah, they're underrated grass fishermen. People just think of them as smallmouth guys because it's Canada, but anybody that's ever fished up in Canada and up in the natural lakes of the north know that there's a ton of grass up there, and they are underrated grass fishermen. We got some grass early in this deal. So yeah, I like the Johnstons as well.
And we mentioned it. I mentioned it the middle part of the season that's uncertain. Lake and the Sabine, Chris Johnson got a top 5 there the last time we were there when Jason Christie won. So you can't count him out in the 55-pound weight tournaments either, or the 100-pound events. So give me your Rookie of the Year, because we got about, like I said to Kyle, we have like 14 or 15 new anglers, but 3 of them, being Bradley Hallman, Keith Poche, and Larry Nixon, can't be Rookie of the Year. They're just newcomers because they've either been rookies or they've been on the elites before, or they've surpassed the $500,000 threshold. And it would be weird if Larry Nixon was a rookie, honestly. You can't, how can you be a legend and then a rookie?
I had Larry Nixon as my Rookie of the Year. I didn't understand. No. I think there are 3 guys that are going to be at the top of the list, and they all got really cool names, to be honest with you. John Sukup is a guy that can catch them, and I'm going to keep an eye on him. I also like Joey Cifuentes. And by the way, I fished with these guys, not in the same boat with these guys, but competed in open tournaments over the last several years. And last year, these guys were all very, obviously very good in the opens. The other thing about this year, this is the last year that we've got guys moving on to the elites that qualified through just one area, one section, one division of the opens. So it'd be interesting to see. We saw Matty Wong really struggle last year, after coming in, now obviously not through the opens, but coming in as a more of a regional type fisherman. And I think he'll do better as the year goes on. But my selection for Rookie of the Year, I'm going with Cooper Gallant. I'm telling you what, this kid catches them everywhere. And I think Cooper Gallant, another Canadian, is going to make some real noise. I'm taking Cooper Gallant as my Rookie of the Year.
I like that pick. And Kyle, it's kind of one of those things that, when it comes to our picks for Rookie of the Year, which are not Cooper Gallant, they better have a decent lead on him or pull their weight when you get to the last three events, because he could just come with reckless abandon to catch up if he is behind. I think he will take his lumps, though, a little bit. I think that no matter how much of a prodigy some anglers are, even our picks for Rookie of the Year, there will be a point in the season where rookies are allowed to take their lumps. There's only a few years where the rookie is going to get the top 5 in points. Normally, they're in that 9 to 20 range for the points race. So we'll see how it goes. But my pick was Cole Sands, a college guy. He fishes every day of the year. He knows the Tennessee River so well. He's fished a lot of tournament days. For how old he is, and really being centralized there in East Tennessee, he doesn't have too far a commute to many places. He's close to South Carolina. He's close to the Florida area. He's close to Alabama. And I really think that he's going to be able to have a lot of time on the water this year. And he's already been much more prepared than most rookies when it comes to boat wraps, sponsors, partnerships. The dude's been fishing at a high level since he won the national championship at Bryan College a couple years ago.
Yeah, he's excellent on the air as well. We've had him on a couple of times because of, winning the college deal a couple of years ago, as you said, and then making it to the elites. And he's got a lot of game.
He's got a lot of Patrick Walters in him too. He's wise and very sharp. And we've talked about that, Kyle. And Kyle surprised me with somebody different than any of the people we've listed off. And I like his reasoning. But like we see with Rookie of the Year, you can get hot and go on a streak. And this guy is one who was on a streak last year.
Yeah, I went with David Gaston. I think that his ability to, have some of those top 10s, top 20s, like really high finishes. I think he's certainly a guy that, there'll be a tournament or two that he'll struggle. The one caveat that we kind of mentioned was the up north swing. When you're his age, which I think he's 25, 26, you're naturally going to have less experience up north. With that said, I've got the chance to hang around him a little bit here recently, and his demeanor and his mindset and his just natural, I guess aura about him is just very like carefree. I'm going to do my thing, which has always bode well for plenty of other of the, shallow water power fishermen like Hackney, Christie, those guys that, they're not big into dock talk. They're not going to converse with a bunch of people that are just going to do their thing and move on. And I kind of get that vibe from David Gaston.
All solid picks. I love that we didn't go over our picks with each other beforehand, and yet they've been different throughout this. Give me your classic champ, Thom, because this one, I have to try to figure out who we're putting on camera, the 10 cameras on day one. And normally there's like 5 or 6 that are taken, and then we just figure out 4 more. Yeah, all 10 are wide open, other than Jason Christie being the reigning champ and Brandon Palaniuk being Angler of the Year. Those are solidified. Who the heck are we putting? Because it could be anyone's game. And so trying to pick a classic champ as well. There's a limited amount who I think could win it. We were talking about that. If there's 55 in the field, first timers, it's very hard to win. If you're from the Opens, the Nation, or college, or the team, it's very hard to win. And then of the elite guys that make it, there's maybe half or a third of them that really have a great chance on the final day of a tournament to pull through and win it on the classic stage. So you really got a 10 to 15 person grouping maybe to choose from if you really, categorize it down.
Yeah. First thing we got to know, I think you got to put a camera with Jeff Gustafson. I mean,
a little bit.
You got to have Gussie on camera but here's the thing, it could be hero or zero for him. What are the chances that those smallmouth and that little honey hole is still running around that boulder? You know what I mean?
Zero chance.
But that's what I'm saying. They're smallmouth, right? I couldn't believe that they were there for, 4 straight days. But now we go back, a year or two later, what are the chances they're still there? So that's different than everything else. So I think that you got to talk about Gussie. I'm not going to pick him, but you got to talk about Gussie. He was doing something different. I don't think Tellico's in play here. I fished those lakes up there in a tournament. Loudon and Tellico are so different, but it's such a long way to go to Tellico. I don't think Tellico is going to be in play other than the canal, maybe, or the whatever they call it, thing between the 2 lakes. So that's possible. So then we got to go to the shallow water dirt type fisherman. I love John Cox. All right, John Cox. He has a Forest Wood Cup in his deal already from, I think, back in 2015 or 16 at Wheeler. He was very competitive there the last time. Those types of fish in the areas that he was fishing, I think, will hold up. I think that stuff is still there. So I think John Cox, Greg Hackney is another one that you got to look at. David Mullins of the local guys, you got to keep an eye on him. And then, one that's maybe a little bit off the beaten path, it would be Brandon Cobb. All right, another Carolina boy, South Carolina boy. So I like him too, but I'm going to go with John Cox. I think he gets this done. There's a lot of sentiment for Greg Hackney as well, to complete the career Grand Slam, if you will. But this would be a bit of that for John Cox. He doesn't have an AOY, but right now I'm feeling John Cox. He's going to get that Tim boat up into some real good backwaters and be able to have fish that hold up for him.
You say that Cox doesn't have an AOY. I don't think that he wants an AOY. I don't think his style allows him to get an AOY. He's been close a couple years, and who knows if he could push it through. But I think John's about cutting checks and winning trophies, and the points will be what they'll be. And so I think he fishes each event like it's a one event season. Like he's just trying to do well there. And if he did 99th at Neely Henry, he's trying to just do first at the next one, kind of thing. I like a couple of those picks. You might have overlapped on some of our reasoning for some other guys as well. Kyle, why don't you start us with your classic and let him know who you picked?
Yeah, I got Stetson Blaylock. My reasoning was pretty simple. Obviously in 3 classics, the 2 that he fished that were in the spring, so last year and in 2020, finished 3rd in both of them. I think the springtime sets up so well for him. His ability to have multiple patterns and run multiple things like we saw last year at Hartwell. I think he'll have that opportunity again this year at the Tennessee River. And like Ronnie mentioned when we were discussing it originally was, he likes to crank too. He's a cranker. I think that Stetson Blaylock, at least going into it, also will have less pressure and expectation than a lot of the guys that, that we've named already.
And remember, we remember the 2 5-pounders that he caught on a dinger at Hartwell, one under a dock, one on a brush pile, a little bit different. Those were 2 off the wall, if the chart's here, it's the outlier over here, because he was cranking a red plug the whole tournament. He was doing something way different than everybody. And if you think about it, a red plug was what he was doing at Gunnersville as well when he got a top 5. And if we're talking about cranking and maybe a dirty river, a red plug, that's what it is. And so he's not going to have to do anything different. We're thinking about finesse fishing for him, clear water. No, he was throwing a red plug for 90% of the Hartwell till he needed to make the adjustment on the final day, and he caught the biggest bag of the tournament.
Right.
My pick, a little bit of a fan nostalgia. People will think it's that, but I don't see how Gerald Swindle doesn't have 8 rods on deck and catch a fish on every single one of them, whether it's a crankbait, a chatterbait, a spinnerbait, a jerkbait, a jig. I just feel like late March, like I told Kyle, if Puxatawny Phil is correct in 6 more weeks of winter, that winter will be done right before the Classic, and it'll be maybe an actual spring and not a late winter Classic. And I think that bodes well. The farther we get away from winter for Gerald Swindle, the better. I think covering water, I think fishing new water, I think just running and gunning, I think fishing marinas like we saw Ott Defo do at sometimes, I think fishing current. I think that Swindle, none of these other lakes have set up well for him in terms of time of year. Like Hartwell's a clear water fishery, and it was colder, but it was close to the spawn. Like it was getting spawn time. It was in between, but it was clear water. We go to the Grand Lake Classics that have been in the spring, dirty and ultra cold. This one's going to be dirty, and it could be a little bit warmer outside. It could be a little bit more, fruitful in the backs of pockets and things like that. And so I feel like this one's going to be a little different than all the other classics he's fished in the spring, and it could bode well for him. I did mention guys like Mullins and Brandon Card. I think Card, if he hadn't had this spout with Bell's palsy and his other sickness, he's the one who knows the most about there. Yeah, I hope he's better by then. I hope he's safe at the first 2 events as well when he goes, because he's a trooper for what he's going through. But man, Card's local knowledge could really pay off well for him there if he can be close to 100% fishing that event.
Yeah, there's no doubt. It was what he's going through physically that had me not put him on my list. So just because there's so much conditioning and everything else that you got to be, in shape for. So, but we'll see. But no, how popular would a Swindle win be? I mean, oh my gosh, it would be ridiculous.
Yeah, and I think that I don't know. it's hard to keep picking a guy who hasn't won one like that, but we still pick Greg Hackney. We still pick Jessie Christie until they did. And Swindle's had his flashes and his flares in the Classic. It's always fading away on one of the days. Day 2's either tough, and then he has another good day 3 to catch up, or day 3 is tough and he was in contention and fell down to the teens in the final day or something like that. But I think that this could be it. And he's doing those ice tubs. That's going to help his knees way more than those injection shots. He's going to be ready to go. We're through half of our list. We got 3 more to go. These are much quicker though, because there's not too much deliberation about them. But give me a breakout angler that was maybe 70th or below in the Angler of the Year standings last year that you think will jump up and have a bounce back, Thom.
Well, we got to qualify this. All of these huge names that were down at the bottom.
There's like 6 easy ones to pick.
Yeah, I'm not taking those guys right. Like, I mean, there's Ike and Kennedy and all of these
Terry
guys.
and Welcher and
the legends that were down. Now Welcher, I like to come up, but I'm going to give you what does Mercer call him? The little ball of hate. Wes Logan. That's the one I'm going to go with. I think he was 74 last year. I think Wes Logan is primed to make a move up that list. Another one I like is Justin Hamner. This is a kid that I thought would do a little bit better, when he first got in. He has showed up at times. He's had a camera in a boat once in a while, but I like Justin Hamner to make a move. Does Matty Wong get it figured out? I don't know. But of the group right now, I'm taking Wes Logan. Of the non-legends, I mean, it's hard not to say, well, could Ike have a big year?
Yeah.
Who knows? Steve Kennedy. I mean, it's ridiculous to see his name down there. Mark Menendez. There's a lot of big names on the bottom half of this table, but I'm going to go Wes Logan.
We got the fruit up here, and then we got those 6 low-hanging fruit guys that anybody could pick and feel like they're smart when they make a bounce back. But yeah, it's more of an outlier that they're down there rather than a breakout if they pop back up. So I like your train of thought, and my train of thought was very similar. I picked Justin Hamner. I kind of saw it with Welcher and Hamner last year. I don't know if they got electronics obsessed and missed out on opportunities in the elite season. We saw them both do so well at the Classic using forward facing sonar and using that at Hartwell. But the rest of the season, they just kind of took a break. I guess, they were probably trying their hardest, but we just didn't see them really show up consistently through the regular season. I think that Hamner, especially because I think Walters is going to have an AOI season, they don't room together because they can't, but they talk a lot and they fish similar. And I think that this season could line up well for Hamner.
Mm-hmm.
Kyle?
Yeah, and I went with somebody a little bit more out on a limb. Maybe I love the Wes Logan pick. I certainly think that's a huge possibility. With that said, I went with Alex Redwine. So the first half of the season, like Ronnie and I mentioned, could not have went much worse for Alex, but the last half of the season went really well. Obviously, cashing a check in the last 3 events of the season. He rooms with Jay Shakurat. I think that those two are really starting to get their footing, and the back half of this schedule makes me think that as long as he has some solid finishes, the back half with the last 3 Northern events, I think he'll do really well. And so I'm not sitting here telling you he's going to finish top 10 in AOI, but I think there's a real possibility for him to make a big jump in the standings.
Thom, this next one's pretty easy. So straightforward, yes or no. And if it's yes, you have some explaining to do. If it's no, we understand why. Will there be a lake break 100 pounds this year? We talk about the Century Club. It's not an every year occurrence except when we go to Lake Fork, but Lake Fork's not on the schedule this year. Will we do it? We saw it 3 different lakes, 8 different anglers last year in 2022. Will we break 100 pounds this year? And if so, where or which lakes?
Yes, absolutely. We will. I mean, the obvious one is the Sabine River, right? I mean, clearly. Right. So yeah, it's going to happen twice.
You got me on that one.
Yeah, of course, it's the Sabine River. Why not? Everybody loves the Sabine River. We love our friends down there. Great fans, by the way, tremendous fans down there.
No, you can't make up for it now. I know you can't go back now. Just move on to your 200-pound lake.
The shot has already landed.
Little 45-pound tournament, and great fans. It's going to be tremendous. Santee Cooper, obviously, you got to go back to Santee Cooper. It's a little later. I mean, you're a Carolina boy. You could tell me more. That feels going into post spawn. It'll still be fish and spawn, I suppose. So Santee Cooper, I think, happens. And I think it's going to happen again at the St. Lawrence. I think they're just out there. They're, you start at 25 pounds to get on to, into the top 10 for the final day. You got to have 25 pounds a day. It seems like it's not way over 100 because it's just who caught 2 6-pounders, right? Or a 6.5 and a 6 to go with all the rest of the 5-pounders. So I think we have to say that the St. Lawrence will do it again. There's another 100-pound bag of smallies out there. And I'm going to say that Santee Cooper, there won't be 4 or 5 of them, but somebody I think will get it at Santee Cooper, depending on how the spring goes weather-wise and what phase those fish are in.
Thom, I hate to burst your bubble, but both Kyle and I both said no. We don't think it'll happen. There are so much. Well, and that's what I thought it was going to take 137 pounds to win Harris Chain last year. It took 77. So I was way optimistic there.
37 pounds off. I remember.
Yeah. I was only
37 pounds off from
that much.
Yeah. I think that I think that Santee, the fish will be a little bit more spread out. There's not going to be as many waves of spawners to where when you need a clutch big one to just roll up on the final day and start spawning, it's not going to be there. There's going to be plenty of ways to catch them. And I think we talked about it. I think there's going to be quite a few guys in the 90s, but I just don't think 100 will be broken. I said St. Clair had a better chance to break 100 than the St. Lawrence this year out of the smallmouth places. I think that of the southern places, Seminole definitely has a great opportunity, but I think it'll be like a runaway. I think one dude will be in the mid to high 90s or something, with second being in the mid to high 80s. Like it'll be a 7 to 10 pound win for somebody, I feel, just because who knows how the weather will be, but also when you just become a carnivore in Spring Creek on each other's spots, it is so hard to win the dang thing out of there or to both succeed. And I feel like there's going to be some doing and dying for that. Kyle, any other rationale for you on why you said no?
No, the only thing I didn't mention previously is that, Thom obviously mentioned being more optimistic. If you've watched any of our preview shows of any of the events from last year or fantasy fishing shows, I always say it's not going to happen just in hopes that it will. So I kind of go reverse psychology, and I'm kind of doing the same thing here. I hope I'm wrong. I sure do. But I just don't think it's going to happen. I think the odds are against it, as many as we had last year.
You're wrong.
Hey, this is why we get to watch it play out, and we're excited. Hopefully we are wrong. I would love to do a couple 100-pound tournaments and make a couple cool graphics on the final day for whoever catches an 8-pounder to break it. Now, the last one, Thom, name an angler who will get a win in 2023, and where will they get their win?
On his way to your AOY title and contending again, I'll say Patrick Walters at Murray. I think that would be really, really popular. I'm going to go Patrick Walters at Murray. I have Corey Johnson on my list as well to potentially get it done again at the St. Lawrence River there. The Johnson boys are ATM machines, when they get there to the St. Lawrence. Fighter at St. Clair. I'm going to call 2, though. I'm going to say, for sure, I'm going to say Walters at Murray, Fighter at St. Clair. All right. There's 2 guys that are going to win a tournament and they get a blue trophy on lakes that are very, very strong on.
He's going double or nothing, Kyle, because if he gets the first one right after Murray, we're going to remember that he's got another parlay out there that he can double up or bust the bank. So we'll see, Thom. I went with Matt Herron at the Sabine, and I also put a caveat, maybe Lay Lake, one of those 2 in the middle of the season, Matt Herron at the Sabine or Lay Lake. I think Matt Herron will get a lot less attention from all the locals. I know he's on the Coosa River around there, but I feel like there's 4 or 5 guys that are going to be considered more at Lay than him. So if there's a chance to slide under the radar as an Alabama angler, maybe it's there. But I do think the Sabine really fits well for him, and I think that we've seen Bill Lowen do well there in the past. I think his style of fishing in June could do well there. So I picked Matt Herron to get a win, a little bit of a surprise since he hasn't won an elite title. He's been close before. And we'll just have a chance to talk about 2016 at Bull Shoals in Norfolk. We'll just bring that up every time we get a chance when Tharp said, when you get the opportunity to win, Hammer, we'll see it, because he ended up winning Texas, the TTBC a couple months later after that, and his elite title is on the way, I think, for Matt Herron this year.
Yeah, and I went with Greg Hackney. I think you could look at basically any schedule, any year, and probably pick an event or 3 that he would have a potential for winning. But my logic is you look at the first 6 events of the schedule and just close your eyes and take a pick. I think he has a good chance to win any of those events. If I had to narrow it down to 2, I mean, obviously as 1 at the Sabine River, he's been outspoken to us and myself personally that he really likes fishing summertime southern tournaments where they're grinders. So I could easily see him doing it there. I could easily see him doing it at Okeechobee, but for some reason, I just mentioned this a moment ago. There's so many locals in the Lay Lake event. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out because there'll be a lot of guys that have advantage on paper. I think it's going to be somebody that wins that tournament that does not have as much of an advantage because there's too many guys in that tournament that know too much, and I think they're going to overlap on each other. And I say that because I've fished the lake a lot. The lake I fished by far the most. I think it's going to take somebody like Hackney, a Christie, somebody that knows less about the place, but it fits their style to come and having a good event. So I could see it happening at Lay Lake as well.
Awesome. Thom, any qualms on our picks so far throughout the year? We can't squabble and change. No. This is written in stone now that we've said them.
No, absolutely not. I mean, it's not like we're way out on a limb there. The red wine pick I thought was interesting for rookie of the year, but a great sense of, talking about going up north and if he's close, he's liable to do the same thing that what we saw last year and close strong. But no, I think these are really, really great picks. I'm pulling for the G-Man. I want him to get a blue trophy somewhere. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see if he got the Classic before he got a blue trophy, but I don't know where it could happen. He's one of those guys that knows Lay Lake pretty well as well. I think he can be good at the Sabine, but I'm just pulling for the G-Man and I'm fishing his rods and reels this year as well with 13 fishing. So I'm fired up about that, and I want to see him get a win.
Well, if Thom Abraham has an uptick on the co-angler side, Kyle, we know it's not because of Thom. It's about the equipment he's using now. So now we know the secret. We know the secret.
Yeah. The new Meta rods and the Inception G2 reels that Gerald worked hard on for over 2 years are hitting the market here soon. And I'm fired up about them. And I think that's going to be the difference. I mean, I think clearly I'm the favorite now in the co-angler AOY. I don't even know if they have one of those in Division 1 because that's what I'll be fishing, Division 1, which is, I don't even know what we call that anymore. I guess we just call it Division 1.
Yep. But, Eufaula, Wheeler, and Harris Chain.
Yeah, it was funny because Drew Benton, he does great on Eufaula as well, and he's on Bassmaster Radio this week. And I asked him, you got any suggestions for fishing the back of the boat at a tournament that's going to be dominated by brush? And he just said, have fun, bring a sandwich and watch
bring
your pro fish the brush pile.
Bring your own live scope for the back of the boat.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Thom, I appreciate you joining us. We're going to get a couple different types of guests on this podcast for predictions, some from the industry, some from the radio perspective like you, and some that make their living with a rod and reel. So we will see how their picks line out. I appreciate you taking the time from your busy schedule and your radio show to talk to me and Kyle.
All right. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Thom. It really helps, Kyle, to have some really good guests on the prediction show. We can make our predictions, and you see things on the water from the elite perspective, surface level, and I see things from, Google Earth version because we're in Bassmaster Live and we're seeing everything. But I think it's important for the prediction show to get somebody who actually makes a living with their rod and reel that can maybe put some strength behind the prediction. So, Kyle, of course, after winning Angler of the Year in 2022, we had to have Brandon at least join the podcast to kind of just stake his claim for 2023 before we actually kick the season off.
Yeah, we needed to have him on here regardless, but in the fashion of picking a little preseason picks like we're doing here, I think that this is the best opportunity to get his opinion because, like you said, for the most part, our opinions are pretty much garbage. Nobody cares, but people do care about what Brandon Palaniuk has to say, so that's good enough for me.
Well, Brandon, I don't want to take too much time. We got a couple questions we're going to have you, kind of bracket and categorize and make your predictions on, but you've done this now twice. You've won Angler of the Year. You've won Elite Series events. The only thing you hadn't won is the sport of fishing because you've won the Bass Nation. You've won Opens, is a high school championship, a college championship, which you weren't able to participate in, and a Classic. So kind of briefly tell me how special 2022 was for you, that you had 2 top 3s, you broke 30 pounds for the first time in a tournament day, you broke 100 pounds for the first time, you won Angler of the Year, and you kind of did it in dramatic fashion in the final event, kept everybody on their toes. But what goes into a 2022 season that's AOY, and just like your 2017, seems like it's got to go completely correct, or you got to get the breaks to be able to make it happen.
It really does. And it's amazing how when it's happening, it seems like it's so easy. And when it's not going your way, it seems so hard. But every single one of those seasons starts with the first cast. And that's approaching super quick for 2023. And, last season, it started with that first cast, and every cast after that just felt like it was right. All the decisions I made seemed like the right decisions. And I fished very free and open, kind of trusted my own gut instincts. And even when I didn't have a good practice, I was able to kind of, put something together during a tournament where my practice was a 60 or 70th place type of practice. And then I end up finishing in the top 20, and those are the types of events that not everybody sees. You're not on Bass Live. You don't make any headlines, but those are honestly the ones that win Angler of the Year.
I gotta ask this.
Yeah, go ahead, Kyle.
I gotta ask this, Ronnie. I haven't had the chance to ask you this since it happened, but has it fully set in how it happened there at the last tournament? Because I imagine, like, for you during that last event there at the Mississippi River, that had to have been awful. But looking back on it, surely you like, has it hit you like how wild those 2 days were?
It was pretty intense. And I don't think I would have had it any other way. I mean, obviously, my heart probably would have taken the easy route and a little less stress. But I think it made the third day really special by having a really, really tough second day, right? Like just barely getting over that hill after, thousands and thousands of casts, and then to have it come down to, one cast make or break whether or not I made the cut and had a shot to continue winning AOY. And then day 3 just went back to seeming easy. So it was like something said, hey, you don't have this in the bag. You still have to earn it, and we're going to make you earn it on day 2. And then day 3 was that reward for getting over that hurdle. And it honestly made day 3, I think, that much more exciting and fun for me.
Well, I'll say this: when we had the camera in your boat, all 3 days that you were fishing at the Mississippi River, I'll say you had a 36, 37 point lead over your nearest pursuer after Oahe, and when you turned right out of the ramp and did a U-turn, I was like, he's playing it a little safe, I feel, and he's going to finesse fish his way to solid limits and just ride this sucker out. And day 1, it seemed like it was pretty easy as well. You pulled up on some places, you caught some fish, you have that swim bait fish that you catch that's like, it's going perfect. And then the next day, I don't know if those conditions changed a little bit, but it got even tougher than we could have ever expected in that region. I know obviously things happen. I could have had easy 12-pound limit in the first hour, but I lost some fish or they didn't commit. There's all kinds of things we don't see on live, even with a camera in the boat. And then the final, your day 3, after you do eliminate one of your competitors and out of the 3-man race for AOY, and you just need to move up a little bit to secure the thing. And you go out and catch the quickest limit of the week for you. You go catch a double on top water. I was wondering, did Brandon get did he get like an olive branch from a competitor? They're like, yeah, they're blowing up everywhere over here, go over here. But I know that's not the way you roll, but it was just so easy. I was like, there's no way. It's just like the same Brandon mindset, and all of a sudden it just works so well the next day. But that's just how it goes for an AOY season. You just stick to your pattern, stick to your path, and all of a sudden they come up, or it just works out.
Yeah, it's amazing how when you can look back at an event and you start talking to guys of like, which competitors fish in which regions and things like that. And I knew that day one I had first boat draw and I could pick anywhere I wanted. And I was really torn between three places, like turning right, going up the Black River, which I ended up doing, running to where Drew Benton caught him and started, apparently, and he got 14 or something the first day. And then my other choice was what I found out later was where Brian Schmidt started. And then Brian News came in after that. And I was like, literally, if I would have just ran to one of those places first, it would have been probably a lot easier. But by the time I got down there on day 3, Matt Airy was already sitting on it. Carl Jochimson was in the area. I talked to him and he's like, oh, dude, that thing's been pounded all day. But that's how easy it is, right? Sometimes it's literally just the difference of turning left versus turning right.
Well, and I'll say this, that we they're like, wow, good thing Brandon caught him on day 3 to move up a little bit because Lester brought his A game and moved from 10th to 4th. I always like to say, you never know, one day of fishing affects the other more than we know. And Lester, knowing he was eliminated, could go do whatever he wanted, and he might not have caught the big bag if he had to. If he needed to move to 6th to win AOI and the door was open, you might fish a little tighter. You might fish a little different. Yeah. But knowing it was close, he goes and catches the biggest bag of the tournament. And you're like, probably, thank goodness, like I did my job yesterday, but it's one of those things. So we know a lot goes into it. So why don't we, Kyle, go get started with our couple prediction questions. And first off, Brandon, because we're on the topic of that, winning angler of the year, kind of give us your short list or your guy that sticks out based on the schedule, based on maybe where they're at in their career, who you could see winning angler of the year, or are you just going to go ahead and go back to back? Because your first AOI, we started at Okeechobee as well, or we fished Okeechobee early.
Yeah. Okeechobee was our second event. I think I finished
best finish of the year, I think.
Absolutely terrible. Yeah, I would have just been better off saving the money, not paying the entry fee, not paying the gas money to drive to Okeechobee, and just save the 4 points or whatever I ended up with. I mean, obviously, I would love to go back to back. I love our schedule. I think it sets up well. But not choosing myself, I would look at a guy like Drew Cook because he's getting older. He's a little bit more seasoned, and he really hasn't had like a bad year. I mean, ever since he came into the elites, he's been really consistent, been up in that top 33%, I feel like. And I think the schedule sets up well for him as well. And I think that he's getting more comfortable with the smallmouth and those types of things. Just a little bit more time in the boat where I think he'll make a run at it again.
Yeah, our 2 picks, I like the Drew Cook pick, and my pick is kind of along the line, somebody who was a rookie the same year as him. And Kyle went a little different, but that back third of the schedule being 3 legitimate smallmouth places, you can fish for largemouth at Champlain, but we're now seeing it turn into, you got to have at least a couple smallmouth in your bag. It's hard to do what Denny did back in the day and catch all largemouth and win. That you really got to have no weaknesses now. You can't just have such a big lead and go to 3 smallmouth places, because that's the 33% of your schedule. Yeah. If you struggle up north, it's hard to do it. And so I picked Patrick Walters for the same kinds of reasons. He's got 2 in his home state. He normally does very well in Florida, and he's got some experience at Seminole, I do believe. Those grinders in the middle of the season at Lay and Sabine, I think that's he adapts well to 100-pound events or 55-pound events. And then I think that he's put in a lot of time up north, and I saw him be able to experiment fishing other tours up north with a lot less pressure on him to make those decisions, make those long runs, adjust from catching 9 pounds and catching 25 pounds and figuring out how to do multiple 20-pound bags, in a row and not just hero or zero. So I think this could be Patrick's year. I think he's got 3 top 5s in AOI in a row. And I just feel like it's, he's been a little quiet since he won Fork, and since he won, since he kind of set the tone with forward-facing sonar with Fork and with the Open at Hartwell. He's kind of been quiet in terms of wins, but he's still top 5 in AOI those years. And everybody, if you're at the event, he's not quiet. He makes splashes, but it's one of those things where it's like, is he going to, he's going to go on a tear at some point, maybe, if Brandon Palaniuk allows him. But Kyle also has a guy who's just, I feel like it's been so close, especially at the end of 2022. And he could string together some crazy amount of success if he keeps it going.
Yeah, and I've got one of the Johnston brothers. I'm not sure which one. I told Ronnie previously that I'll take credit for either if one of them wins. But for the same reason, I mean, obviously, when you look at the back half of the schedule with the 3 smallmouth events, and then both of them have a lot of experience at Okeechobee and the tournaments in between. Like, I feel like there's no reason to believe they wouldn't bridge the gap. But I will say the most uncomfortable thing about this is looking at my predictions and realizing that I'm telling Brandon Palaniuk to his face that I don't think he's doing it. So hopefully that motivates
hey, that's okay with me.
That's worked in the past for other series, so hopefully that works again for you this year.
Yeah, I'm totally okay with that. I'll use it as a little motivation, and then hopefully at the end of the year I can just look at you and smile and nod my head, and you'll know exactly what I'm talking about.
Dang right.
Well, I predicted that Brandon Lester, after winning the Open last year to start the year, I said he's going to go on a tear. He's going to win an elite. He's going to win Angler of the Year. And so maybe my prediction will finish. Maybe he'll finish second to you. So if Walters finishes second, then I know I'm on to something. That it's whoever I pick is behind Brandon. They're fighting for second. Everybody we pick.
Yeah.
Brandon, this next one's interesting because you are a student in the game. You pay attention to a lot of the tournaments, whether you're in them or not. Some of those names. You have some of those people that you've paid attention to for years. People like Alex Wetherell, who's maybe more of an unknown commodity from Connecticut that I know well from the Opens. Kyle knows, but he's somebody who's mentioned you before that you've reached out and you've been able to talk to him on a couple things. And so you pay attention to the rookie class a little bit more than others. We've got, I think, 14 or 15 guys joining the Elite Series this year that are new. Larry Nixon, new to the elites, but not new to Bassmaster. And then Bradley Hallman and Keith Poche are not rookies. Everybody else is fair game, though. No one is over that 500,000 threshold. We've got guys that are Opens veterans, guys that came from the college series, and guys that have fished professionally on other tours that have made the jump over. So tell us, in that rookie of the year race, who you kind of have your eye on as maybe one of the young gun Jay Shakirats of the world.
And there's such a tough rookie class this year because there's a lot of guys that can catch them. I'll give my top 3, and I don't know where in that top 3 that they'll finish, but Coop Gallant. I mean, I've been watching Cooper since he was just only fishing in Canada. Some of the riders up there had mentioned his name. He is a phenomenal angler. He's super young. He's driven, does great on the media side. And so it'll be fun to watch kind of how he handles that next level of pressure, because he did great in the Opens last year. Another one, guy that's he's been fishing a long time, kind of took a break and then came back. He's one of my Alpha Angler teammates, is John Sokup. The last 2-3 years, he's really caught him across a lot of different tours. And then I think my sleeper one that a lot of people might not know is Brian Smith out of California. If you look at any of like the Western swing type stuff, that is a guy that lives and breathes bass fishing. And he's a young guy. Did really good on the NPFL, made it through the Opens. He's a very underrated angler, and it's just because he hasn't had the spotlight to show it off.
And it's interesting, Ronnie. We kind of mentioned this. But what's interesting about this rookie class, and it seems like it's like this to a certain extent every year. But you look at the class as a whole, and it's really hard to distinguish one guy to be like significantly higher than the others. Like when I made my pick, I honestly went out on a limb more than I thought that, maybe I should have, solely based on the fact that I knew if I picked one of, these top guys, it was like anybody in this whole class could honestly win Rookie of the Year. And I don't think anybody would really be all that surprised.
Yeah, the fact that Brandon said, I'm going to give you 3, not 1, and none of his 3 matched up with our picks, and Tom Abraham even picked multiple,
There you
and
go.
they didn't match up with me. That just shows you it's kind of the whole class. And so I've got my eye on Cole Sands. I think that Cole fishes a whole bunch.
Yeah.
I think time on the water is huge for young anglers. He's obviously got the pedigree from college, winning a championship, being in the bracket a couple times. He's definitely knows how to fish team aspect, but then he's proven it individually with a couple top 10s in the opens. And then obviously making it through the overall last year, the commitment level and diverse fisheries that he had to go through. And so I think that Cole fishing on the Tennessee River, you know this coming from the West Coast, there's a lot of diverse bodies of water out there that prepare you for the whole country. But I think the Tennessee River prepares you for the whole country as well. There's different times a year. They're fishable all 12 months of the year, and they show you something a little bit different: heavy current, dirty water, clear water, offshore, shallow. So I think Cole's well prepared for the moment and the opportunity. And I do think that each rookie is going to have a bomb. I don't think that it's going to be like a like Jay had a couple, in the mid that summer. He had the whole pre-spawn and spawn taken care of. He had the summer down south that he struggled, and then the northern swing was stellar. I think that we're going to see this rookie class each take their lumps at some point, and it's going to be down to the last. The St. Lawrence. It's going to be really fun to see if Coop's in the mix, Joey Cifuentes, who does great up there. Yeah. What smallmouth guys, if they're making up a deficit or trying to hold a lead, for rookie of the year, and Kyle's got even a different guy as well.
I forgot about Joey. That's another great pick. So who knows who's going to win it? It's going to be fun to watch.
The entire rookie class, like you could justify any single one of them. But for that reason, I'll keep my reasoning pretty short. But I got David Gaston, somebody that obviously was a little streaky in the opens, but when he got hot, I mean, it was just basically knocking out top 10 after top 10 after top 10 in the opens, which we obviously know is extremely difficult to do. I told Ronnie that, I got to spend some time with him here recently shooting some content. He's only 45 minutes from here, in Birmingham. And I just get the vibe from him that he's one of those guys that's just going to do his own thing. I don't really know that he has a big, travel partner or anything like that. It just seems like one of those guys that's going to do his own thing and not get too washed into dock talk and things like that, which, I think for young guys, a lot of times can be an issue because it's, the lack of experience of, trusting your instincts on that level. But I just get this weird vibe from him that he's just going to do his own thing. And the way he fishes, at least in the first half of the season, should work. Told Ronnie the back half of the schedule bothers me a little bit because he's a young guy also and does not have a lot of experience up north. But I don't know, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, it'd be cool to see.
And I'll say about the offseason is interesting. I reached out to almost all the rookies. I think I reached out to all the rookies that have the ability to text back. And I just told them I was here for anything. If they have questions, if they whatever. And John Sokup, Joey Cifuentes, and David Gaston have been the 3 that have reached out to me the most about things. So I see how serious they take it. And so it's very cool to see. And they all have some pro experience. Is this the year, Brandon, 2023 Classic champ, Brandon Palaniuk? Are you just going to go do the AOY thing and then roll it into a Classic? Or who's going to take the cake in Knoxville? Because this is one that's becoming a familiar fishery. We got a lot more intel on it, but it's a little later than we've ever been there. And I think that makes it more wide open. I'm trying to think about the 10 guys we have on camera day one. I don't even know what storylines we could run with. Everybody's got something. So,
yeah. I mean, it's such a diverse fishery, and it's a very volatile fishery that time of the year, depending on what Mother Nature throws at us. We could see snow, we could see 75 and sunny, we could see all of that and everything in between the same week. It's a very interesting time of year, so it's hard to look out and pick a guy based on his strengths or something because you don't know what those are going to be. Right, you could say, "Oh, it's going to be cold when we get there. Things are going to be offshore. Gussie's going to crush them." It could turn into a shallow, muddy, dirty backwater type thing, and John Cox crushes them. I think a guy like David Mullins, who can block out all of the noise that goes on at the Classic and has experience in that area, knows that type of fishery, those kind of early spring upper Tennessee River impoundments. I think he's a guy to watch that, cold water cranking, he can fish offshore, he can fish shallow. I think he's a pretty solid one to watch.
Yeah, I think we've briefly touched on that, especially if a plug is in play, be able to cover water with some moving baits. Mullins, that's his bread and butter. I picked a guy similar to his style. I guess a mentor to him maybe a little bit, and that would be Gerald Swindle. I said I could see him having 8 rods on the deck and catch one on all 8 rods, just because he could just
go awesome.
fish a new body. You go fish a new pocket, go fish the main river, fish a point, fish some riprap, fish what looks good. I think that it could set up for him. I'll say this before Kyle does his pick and let you know. I tried to bracket the field. They always have the classic odds, and we have 55 anglers. No offense to the Opens, Nation, Team, College. No one's won it from there in a long, long time. It's hard. They got a much lower chance, even though it's 1 in 55 chance. They got a much lower chance in my mind. Then you have the 30 to 35 to 40 Elite Series guys that make it every year. They're all great. They made it. But I still think there's about 15 of them who have a valid shot with the Classic pressure and the situations and how it changes that event. 15 of them have a shot. And then out of those 15, 7 figure out something. It's a much smaller percentage of angler that has a shot to win a Classic. And I'm not saying you're not in that group, but there's those guys who have had those chances, those close things. When we're wondering if Jason Christie has the ability to win one, that it's here. It's all this, and it's just so hard to put it together. So I think that if someone finishes their career with never winning the Classic, that shouldn't be used as an insult, because it's just a small percentage of people who enter that tournament that even have a shot, I will say, unless they just have the magical week that they get hot. And Kyle's Classic pick is one that I think that it's kind of like we've been saying this, and then I just feel like he's going to win it as well at some point,
Yeah, for 2 reasons, I think Stetson Blaylock has as good of a shot as anybody. One, based on his, how close he's got between 2020 at Guntersville, last year at Hartwell, and then literally the exact reason Brandon mentioned before is the fact that, in most of the tournaments he does extremely well. He's able to have multiple patterns and multiple things figured out, which in a tournament in the springtime on a body of water, like Brandon mentioned, that is going to be changing no matter what the conditions are. Even with stable conditions, there's going to be, change pretty much every day. Somebody that, strives in that type of tournament, it seems like eventually it's going to happen. But Ronnie did bring up the Classic odds. Did Brandon Palaniuk get a chance to look at the Classic odds today?
I didn't look at them today. Didn't something come out a couple days ago? I thought I saw it in the magazine. I don't know. I saw something somewhere.
The Classic odds came out today on the website, and leading the charge is one Brandon Palaniuk at a 3-to-1 odds.
3-to-1 odds. Man,
boy.
People got to bet 1,000 to make 1,300 for you right now. Holy cow. I'm trying to bet 5 and make 1,000,
Perfect. Hey, I'm not against it. I'll let it happen.
I think you get to be boat one for the Classic as well. And then the defending champ is boat 2. So, you get your free choice. I don't know if you're going to hook a Yui and go up. There's a lot less real estate that way. So we'll have to see. This takes us to the award that I'm going to dub the Kenta Kimura Award. And it's for the guys who have maybe had a tough year, and then, man, they have the opportunity to bounce back in a big way. And Kenta Kimura, his first year on the Elite Series was around that 69th, 70th place borderline mark, beating about 20 people in the field or so, and then jumped up into the top 20. I think he finished 17th in AOI. What a phenomenal 2022 for Kenta. Who is someone that you're looking at in the bottom 20 of that AOI list from 2022 that you could possibly see just with the schedule sparking something? Maybe it was out of character that they were down there, but you think that 2023, all the gears are going to go and they're going to click the way they're supposed to?
I think that, Hank Cherry's one that when you look down toward the bottom, you're like, why is he down there? And we heard Christy talk about after winning the Classic, and like you hear guys that win the Classic and they talk about kind of the Classic hangover. And I don't know if Hank just had like the back-to-back Classic hangover. And so instead of one event, he just had a year, where things didn't go right since he won back-to-back Classics. But when I was looking at that before we did the podcast, I came across his name. I was like, holy cow, that's out of character, right? I didn't expect him to be down there. One that I think had a ton of pressure last year was Daryl Gleason, where he's a great angler that, he was on the verge of getting kicked out. And I feel like by getting back in, not, being out of the elites, that's a very freeing feeling. He's already made a top 10 down in Florida on another tournament earlier this year, last week. So yep. I think, that's good momentum, right? And be really curious to see how he ends up doing this year.
That's a great point, because now there's a tangible thing that people can shoot for. We don't have to worry about what your career average is. We do to a certain point, but everyone controls their own destiny by making it to a certain number in the AOY race. I'll have to refresh and look at, you might know off the top of your head. Getting to that certain number means you're safe. So we don't have to worry about averages and stuff. If you just hit that number, you're good to go the next year. Now your average will come into play if you fall below that, and we'll see how the bottom 30, the bottom 40 have to stack up against each other. So that is a freeing feeling. It also is now you don't have to worry about an 80th place finish this event affecting your 4-year average or whatever. I just need to catch them the next week and make that a 60th and get back up to 70, whatever the mark is. So yep. Daryl's a great one that you thought about there, along with someone who's shown the track record of success like Hank. I picked Justin Hamner. Man, he had such a great rookie year, goes and makes the Classic. Before he can even make the class or fish his Classic, he has a terrible first few events. He goes and gets 4th at the Classic, and you're like, with him and Welcher, same thing. This could be the spark to turn around the rest of their season. And they both stayed as flat as they had been coming into the Classic, and that was their one uptick for the year. It's a great one to have an uptick, but it was perplexing. And so he's not in the Classic, and I'm having to remind people. I put a Classic preview out, and people are like, I think Kyle Welcher's going to do well in this one. I was like, I bet you Kyle wishes he was in this one to do well as well. Like, it's just people are shocked that guys like 100%. Hamner and Welcher didn't make it. And so I think Hamner also being close with Walters. I think this forward-facing sonar sucks you in. You could be fishing for the wrong fish or uncatchable fish for too long, and then what do you know? A day's gone by, tournament's gone by, quarter-year season's gone by. So I think Hamner's he's going to figure it out a little bit more this year on how to just close his eyes and go fishing like he knows how to. Kyle, who's your basement to penthouse guy?
Yeah, so I took this a little more literal with the breakout thing, because without a doubt, there's plenty of guys down there that like Brandon said. You can look at the AOY standings, be like, how in the heck did he end up this far down the standings? A guy that I'm gonna say is gonna have a breakout year. I'm not saying he's gonna finish top 10 in AOY or anything, but Alex Redwine, somebody that started the season as poorly as possible last year. Obviously, can't speak for him, but obviously things kind of snowballed in a negative way. And then at the end of the season, just picked it up and cashed 3 checks in a row, had really good events. And I think that there's something to be said for, having a little bit of comfort. Having a little bit of momentum and the feeling of like, I belong out here and I can do this. Obviously the fact that he's with Shakurat, they're good buddies, spent some time around them. Seems like that duo together will work together and have, good success in the future. And that's somebody that I could easily see picking up some momentum. If he has, some good finishes at the beginning of the season, another one of those guys you look at the back half of the season and think, with 3 potential smallmouth events, obviously I think like his chances to end strong. So as long as he can have some, good finishes along the way, it seems like a good opportunity for Alex.
Yeah, and I think that he's actually going to be considered an adult this year. I think he was 16 years old last year, and I think he's almost 18 now. No, I kid with that, but the Red One's very young, and I think that it's hard to have confidence. But you see your roommate win one, you start to have success at the end of the year. I agree, Kyle. It could be something there. These last two are pretty quick hitters, straightforward. 100 pounds is great. We've had it every year. We've been at Fork the last couple of years. We had it 3 times with 8 different anglers in 2022, including you, Brandon. You got your belt for the first time. Will we break 100 pounds this year in an event? If so, which one or ones?
Yep. Sabine River. The entire field.
Tom Abraham pulled that joke as well.
It's going to break 100 pounds. You add the entire field, we're all going to break 100. I really think there's multiple events that have potential. Santee, St. Clair, St. Lawrence River. Like, if you were to pick one time of year that I thought we would break 100 pounds at the St. Lawrence River, it would be when we're going this year.
Yeah, not in July. No,
last year. It was not last year. It would be when we're going now. And I don't think we're going to be at Murray at the right time, but Murray has the fish and the potential to be able to do it, I think. Okeechobee obviously does. I don't know if it'll happen at Okeechobee or not. I mean, it has the potential, but I don't know. I just don't have a lot of faith in Florida. I think it's a little overrated. And I mean, St. Clair, I mean, honestly,
yeah,
you know, could do it as well. So
1 month later,
2 smallmouth fisheries, like,
yeah,
pretty crazy.
I think St. Clair 1 month later, if it was flipped, maybe it was where the St. Lawrence is. It would be not an if, it would be how much over. Could it break the St. Lawrence's record? We both went with none. We don't think it's going to happen this year. Kyle's got his reasons because I think he wants to be cautiously pessimistic, so he's surprised. I think we're going to have some close ones. I think that there's going to be, the Santee event. The winner could be in the 90s, and there's going to be the top 5 all in the upper 80s to 90s. It's going to be close. I think Seminole, the top guy, could be in the mid 90s, but he might have a 7-pound win. It might be one of those things. We're going to see a lot of good weights. Murray, I think you could definitely have some guys in the half the top 10 in the 80s, but no one break 90. It could be close like that. And I did dub out of the 3 smallmouths. I think St. Clair's got the best weight chance out of the other 2. Even though we are going 1 month later for the St. Lawrence, which I like that better, but the weather's the later you go each year, it seems 1 month later for the St. Lawrence, the opportunity to have 4 days of good weather goes out the window. July, it's much easier to have 4 days of good weather, even though that rarely happens too. I think that St. Clair will be the best smallmouth one we have, and I think that Santee, you could hit it in April. It could be fish doing everything. A lot of people catch them a lot of ways, but you can't rely on that 7-pounder pulling up on day 4, to break 100. So I could see it falling just short. And Kyle can reiterate some of those things, but he definitely thinks Lay Lake's going to break 100 though.
Yeah, I definitely
crazy.
do. I do think Murray. That's a good point there. So my brother actually lives in Columbia, and he sends me, pictures of local tournaments there all the time. If it was a different time of the year, I think there would be a real legitimate chance there because, I mean, it consistently takes 26, 27, 28 pounds to win any local tournament over there, which was shocking to me. I'll keep it pretty simple. I don't think it'll happen because my thought on this is always that if I say it's not going to happen and hope that it is, maybe it will. Kind of reverse psychology thing. Not that that has any actual bearing on how the tournament plays out, but that's what we're going with.
Yeah, and I do think Murray. I wish, even though we're back to back in South Carolina, I wish it was super nasty and cold at Murray, and then perfect warm. Great conditions for Santee. You need both. I feel like the nastier it gets at Murray, the better the weights could be. And the nicer the weather is at Santee, the better the weights can be. But, that's a lot to try to get 2 weather swings in a week and a half. But last one, Brandon, sorry we're taking more time than we asked for. We always tend to do that, but you're gracious in staying with us. Name an angler that you think is going to get a win, and bonus if you say where they're going to get that win. Let's do this backwards, Kyle. Let's go first with it so we can kind of give him perspective on who we picked. I picked Matt Herron, and I think he's going to get a win at Lay Lake or the Sabine River. I think that last year was kind of a bad year for him as well, but I think that he could be on the back burner of locals at Lay Lake, and the Sabine really fits him and Bill Lowen's style. We've seen Bill with success there. We've seen Matt with some success there, but I feel like one of those grinders, we could finally see Matt Herron get an elite trophy. Even though he's won some of the grinders like the TTBC, when they had it at Ray Roberts and stuff. But Kyle, who's your one of your winners that you think? It's a lot less dark horse than mine, I'll say that.
I went dark horse on a lot of picks. This was not one of them. So I went I'm going Greg Hackney, and I'm gonna narrow it down to the first 6 events. I think that he has a chance to win one of those 6. Not sure which one, but I really don't know which one it would be. But I think
don't disagree with you.
The first 6 events set up so perfectly. It seems like he's about the most obvious pick to make, at least in the first half of the schedule.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I'm going Swindle. I think like a lot of the podcasts I've watched him do kind of this off season and talking to him a little bit, I just feel like he's in a different place mentally than he's been his entire career. Like I don't know what that's from or why that is, or even have like an exact reason to justify that. But just when I hear him talk, it sounds different to me. And I feel like it's going to happen. And I feel like the entire fishing world would love to see it happen. And the funny thing is that before Ronnie said everything, I was thinking about it. I'm like, man, I think like Gerald is going to win one. And the first 2 lakes that popped into mind was the Sabine River and Lay Lake. So it would be awesome if
we flip it. Yeah.
G and Matt are just like battling it out, and one wins the other.
Oh, if it's in my favor, I'll tell you, Bass Live won't hear enough about that. I'm just gonna play the clip over and over again. No, but that does those 2 set up for a grinder's paradise. Brandon, congratulations on all the success you've had and continue to have. I'd say your AOY was big. I'd say your Century Club was big, but in 2022 you became a dad, and that's even bigger. And so a lot of things are going right for you. And I hope it rolls into a good 2023. You always hold yourself so strong in the media and the way you handle it all. And I can't wait to see day 1 Bass Live. You'd had 18 days on Bass Live last year, and we got to honor the AOI by day 1 of the first event, no matter what people say. And so Okeechobee day 1, if we're going to get 104th out of you, we're going to see it pretty quick. But no,
Let's not do that, please.
I think that, hey, you need one of those. Oahe was not favorable. If you have Oahe and Okeechobee in the same schedule, no AOI. But if you have one of them, it's still up. You can still do it. So we'll see.
We're gonna tackle Okeechobee this year.
Okay,
it's revenge time.
It is revenge. It changes all the time, so it could be in your favor this year. But Kyle, what a great guest. Appreciate Brandon taking extra time for us tonight. And like you said, the week of game time starts next week for the Bassmaster Elite Series at Okeechobee.